This is Eric Spitznagel. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So sorry about that. These things always happen. I was able to hear you, but you weren't able to hear me. So Mark has done a nice introduction to me. I am Eric Spitznagel. I'm the president of DentFix Equipment, a specialty equipment manufacturer and importer for the auto body industry since 1979, when we introduced the stud welding system for steel to the United States market. So we've been doing this for quite a while, and we always try and get ahead of trends and produce equipment that there's a need for, but may not always have the greatest need. So we've had an aluminum repair station available for the last 6 years, and I believe now is the time, as I'm sure you've heard from your customer base out there, that aluminum is coming into its own, and we're going to have to start dealing and addressing the repairability and the repair aspects for our industry. I feel that aluminum repair is a tremendous growth opportunity for all of us.
You have reached the maximum time permitted for recording your message. If you are satisfied with your message, press 1. To listen to your message, press 2. To erase and re-record, press 3.
Are you guys still with me on here?
Are you still there? You have reached the maximum time permitted for recording your message. If you are satisfied with your message, press 1. To listen to your message, press 2. To erase and re-record, press 3.
Gentlemen, are you still there with me?
Yes, we are.
Are you still there?
Okay.
You have reached the maximum time permitted for recording your message. If you are satisfied with your message, press 1. To listen to your message, press 2. To erase and re-record, press 3. Sorry you're having trouble.
Coming in
Your
from my
message
end or
has been
something,
sent. Goodbye.
Bye. Okay, hopefully that's gone. Does everyone still hear me now?
Yes, we are.
We can hear
Okay,
you.
we're working our way through. So, we have a little bit of experience in it, and, the equipment we've been offering, we always hope that it grows. Okay, so background of aluminum. I suppose here we have our first screen. Let's get into the next screen. Okay, next. There we go. So manufacturers today are turning towards aluminum. They've also turned to many other different materials. Some exotic things like carbon fiber, something we've dealt with a couple of years ago, starting in 2005 with the Volvo XC90, boron steels, also known as ultra-high-strength steels. These are all attempts to lighten the vehicle in order to increase gas mileage. They've done a lot with engines. You have your turbo 4s and 6s out there nowadays, but they keep trying to find new ways to lighten the load. Okay, so aluminum is one of those materials that they can utilize. And until recently, it was mostly used on your more exotic vehicles. A Jaguar, it's not entirely exotic, but there's not a lot of them produced. Land Rovers, things like that. The manufacturers have used aluminum hoods for a very long time. Fords, Lincoln Navigators, things like that. But those were, if they were bumped and damaged, maybe they could bump them out relatively easy and putty over it, or it would be several bolts and it was an easy replacement. So nobody really thought much about replacing these parts. But Ford switching to aluminum panels on the F-150 coming out is created a paradigm shift in the repair of these panels. No longer will it be easy just to replace them, but you're going to have to fix them. So not a lot of shops out there are set up right now for aluminum repair. There have always been some specialty guys that were either certified by Audi or Jaguar. But this type of repair is going to be very commonplace now, whether they're certified or not. You can see the proliferation of common steel stud welders, pin welders, out there, and it's a very common way of fixing damaged panels. Well, the same is going to be for aluminum repair and the dings, dents, and creases that occur in panels. The manufacturers are out there prepping their dealers. Well, you know, there's those certification programs that I mentioned before. So the higher-end vehicles, they always needed a way to have the car fixed properly and appropriately. And aluminum requires some very specific needs in order to effect a proper repair. And in a lot of cases in the past, for aluminum has been greater than that of steel, the labor rate at the very least. So it presented a opportunity for body shops to, you know, get the most for their money and not have to argue about it so much with the insurance companies. As I mentioned, the F-150 is a paradigm shift, and it is because of the mass of vehicles that this company produces. The F-150 is the number one selling passenger vehicle in the United States. They sold 763,000 of them last year. Just to break that down for you, because it always is nice to see the small numbers, and because it's hard to wrap your head around 763,000. Well, that's 63,583 cars a month, 14,673 a week, 2,090 a day, 87 an hour, 1.45 vehicles every second. The amount of aluminum panels on these vehicles as they're going out every month equals all of last year's production of aluminum panels. So every month, towards in full production of this F-150, they'll be creating 1 year's worth of aluminum paneled vehicles out on the road. In 12 months, that's going to be 12 years worth of aluminum paneled vehicles on the road from this one vehicle itself. So you start doing the numbers, and it becomes mind-boggling in the explosive nature of what we're going to be dealing with and how relatively unprepared most body shops are. Not only is it going to be the F-150, but the Mercedes-Benz C-Class for 2015 is all aluminum panels. We already understand that the Ford pickups through their range, the 2 Petrol, will be eventually aluminum clad. I believe that it's moving to the sedans in the Ford's lineup, the Taurus also. And we have Chevy has mentioned that their 2018s, they've announced their 2018 Silverado and Sierra pickups will also be aluminum clad. Now those pickups sell in combination around 560,000 units. We're getting a tremendous amount of vehicles out there, and then of course you have your specialties, your Teslas, your Audis, etc. And let me see here for the next screen. The shop's going to have to prepare for this. There's a lot of things that they need to do, but one of them is they're all based on you want to try and minimize the contamination that can happen between steel and aluminum. You're going to need to isolate a work area, and it can be as simple as putting in some vinyl curtains around a certain area in the shop, and also you have to have a completely separate set of tools. You can't utilize tools that have been used on steel and then use them over on an aluminum body because you're going to cross-contaminate with the steel particles into the aluminum. Hammers and dollies are kind of like a no-brainer because you hit them, strike them directly against the surface of the vehicle. Something as simple as taking a grinder to grind off the paint, even if the technician has the wherewithal and the insight to take the disc off of that grinder and put a fresh one on, if he's not decontaminating the tool itself, he's grabbing it with his bare hand, and he's grinding it away, putting it down, and then rubbing his hand along the exposed aluminum panel. This whole gripping the grinding tool has the possibility of having steel dust all in it. And he places his hand on the panel and then strikes it with a hammer. Now all your isolation is gone for naught. Of course, there's ICAR training and certification. Now this
Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you could put your phones on mute, if you're just listening, the background noise is interfering with the presentation tremendously.
Okay, so certification will get the technicians to understand the workability of aluminum, help them understand the practices that they need in order to maintain isolation and integrity of the product that they will finally produce and deliver to their customers. We're in the tool business, and in this instance, we're educating them in a light manner as to what tools to use and what they will need. But I don't think it's really in any of our interests to take on like an ICAR role and get them going with the thing. That's up to them to get certified and make sure that they get those proper trainings going so that they truly understand the workability of aluminum. Aluminum itself is a work-hardened material. When you stamp it into the shape of a fender, it becomes hard. When it gets into a collision, it becomes harder yet. And if you try and take that damage out without softening it, you can crack and break it. It's very much like bending a spoon back and forth. Eventually it will crack and break. But if you soften it, you're able to pull it and move it. Aluminum also will form an oxide on itself when it's exposed to the air. And that oxide is, oxide is a rust, but it's just a dulling of the aluminum. And so when your highly polished aluminum, after you grind it down, will get a slight tarnish on it. And that tarnish actually has a much higher melting point than regular aluminum panels. Aluminum melts at around 1100 degrees. The oxide will melt at 1700 degrees. So that will need to be cleaned off in order to successfully weld studs on it, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But again, aluminum has different characteristics. Galvanic corrosion, that's the big thing that that's the elephant in the room with this material. That's why we need to isolate the area. Galvanic corrosion is a process whereas a less noble metal gives of itself to a higher noble metal. In this instance, it's aluminum on steel. Steel itself does not corrode in the presence of aluminum, but the aluminum corrodes in the presence of steel with an electrolyte in the area, water, moisture in the air. Even if you're in the driest areas, there's still humidity in the area, and electrolysis can happen, and this galvanic corrosion can happen. The aluminum literally gives of itself to steel and corrodes away in a very similar fashion and a look to what happens on top of a battery terminal. Now, when repairing damaged panels and things like that, if you had contaminated tools, it wouldn't cause the fender per se to fall off the vehicle, but the finish after you're done painting the car, the finish would come up like a rust underneath, and that would happen within a week or so. It happens very quickly. The time sort of depends on the moisture content, but it happens well within a week or two. Identifying aluminum, magnetic is the easiest way, but I think the technicians out in the shop will be able to identify what's aluminum and what's not. There are different types of aluminum, but for all intents and purposes, we're dealing with collision repair on panels, and that's the 6000 series. They can alloy them with magnesium or silicone. Aluminum in and of itself is too soft a material to use alone, so they alloy it, again, with magnesium or silicone. The majority of car panels out there are alloyed with magnesium. Some of them are with the silicone, but they tend to be very low production vehicles like Ferraris, etc. This stuff is all very technical. In reality, it for the most technicians and most salespeople, all this information is mostly designed for cast pieces and that kind of thing. So we'll move on that. This is important. The temperature ranges for aluminum. I mentioned that you have to soften it to be able to pull it. Well, you soften it with heat, but the heat range is very specific on aluminum. Again, aluminum melts at 1100 degrees. Aluminum will melt without any reddening. So if you took a torch to it and heated it up to its melting point, it would never show any redness. You'd suddenly see a white bit of dust, and poof, you would have a hole in it. but it still needs to be heated to soften and pull. And that temperature range is between 400 and 600 degrees to get it to soften. And if you exceed 600 degrees, 570 on the chart that you see here, but I like to keep it general so that you keep, it's easier numbers to remember. But if you exceed 570 degrees, you permanently anneal the metal or soften it. So you don't want to do that. And you have to heat it at least to 400 in order to soften and pull. So we have, this is all regarding our aluminum stud welding station, which I'll get into in a second, but I want it to be generally an educational seminar for you as well. So when you're pulling the aluminum to soften it, let's say you have a heavy crease and you've welded some studs onto it. You heat the aluminum panel, okay? That softens it. The aluminum itself doesn't have any memory. The memory is put in with work. When it's stamped, it becomes hard, and that's the new memory set. When it gets into a collision, that's making it harder yet, and then that's the new memory set. Unlike steel just wants to bounce back into the shape that it was, so it makes it easier to pull. So now we have our new memory set that's damaged in the dent. Heating it up allows it to soften to pull so that we can pull it out, but also it's sort of, in some way, it's releasing the memory that's there. And as you pull it out, you're putting work energy into the panel and hardening it up or making it more rigid. And then you're setting the memory into it at that point in time. Let me check here. So as you heat it up, it doesn't need to remain at that 400 to 550 degree temperature. Again, once it's heated, it's been softened. It's the work energy that puts the hardness back in there. If you were dealing with a heavier damage and you're pulling it out and you start feeling some resistance as you're pulling it out, that means you started putting the work energy into it and it's becoming hard and rigid and wants to stay there. So you may have to re-soften it at that point. So you reheat it. Conversely, if it's a shallow damaged area and you've softened it and you start pulling it out and you get it to the area where you want it to be, but you haven't put enough work energy into it, it remains somewhat soft or less rigid than you'd want it to be. So there are devices that we have in our pulling system that allow you to massage the dent, which is basically bouncing it up and down. Again, I like to use a spoon analogy. The spoon is hard, and when you bend it back and forth, you're putting more work energy into it, and it eventually cracks and breaks. If I heated that spoon up, it would be more malleable, and I would be able to bend it back and forth, but eventually I would start feeling the stiffness come back into the spoon. And that's the work hardening process taking place. And then again, I can exceed that and crack and break it again, even though I previously softened it. So it gives you some sort of idea of how these are working. Now, let's see here. Okay, so in order to, the tools for working with aluminum, well, you need some grinding discs, of course, to take off the paint, and you need an isolated set of tools. ICAR always recommends using a digital heat gun to measure the temperature, again, because the temperature range is very specific. They like you to monitor it. Unfortunately, infrared thermometers do not work on reflective surfaces. So once the metal is exposed and bare, it becomes an inaccurate measurement point. So you would have to take measures such as maybe taking a permanent marker like a Sharpie and marking a black area nearby your work area where you're heating to measure off of that. In our system, there's a picture there, the third picture down, sticking out there. With our system, we use a digital set heat gun, which has temperature set ratings between 450 and 550. For concentrated heating of the panel, that's fine. And then also there's another set range between 650 and 750 degrees. But even though I've told you not to exceed 600 degrees, aluminum absorbs heat so readily that it won't ever exceed that. Aluminum is a great conductor of heat, and so that's another thing. In order to heat it up, you have to be aware that it's spreading that heat along very quickly. And that allows you to overheat with the air being brought out of the heat gun, but also understand that it's being spread, that it never reaches the top ranges of what's actually coming out of that heat gun. In order to fuse a stud onto aluminum, you can't just use, for years we were always asked, hey, can I get an aluminum stud and just put it in my stud welder? You can't. Again, because aluminum absorbs heat so readily, normal stud guns do not generate heat fast enough to weld the pin on. So you need a capacitor discharge welder, which builds up the energy in a capacitor and then releases the energy as direct current to literally fuse the stud onto the aluminum panel. And then if you put your finger right after you pull the trigger on that stud, the metal would be cool already. It would be that fast that the stud, the heat dissipated. And also because of that, there's no penetration through the E-coat on the other side. Our complete system of tools for working the aluminum would also include, different pulling devices such as a T-puller for light pulls, a bridge puller for pulling across creases, and the squeeze puller, again, that's for pulling on a single pin or for pulling on several, but it has that squeezing or that bouncing action in it that allows you to put that work energy into it. You're going to need to maintain some stainless steel brushes and, of course, those separate hammers and dollies. Again, separate hammers and dollies, I say don't cross-contaminate between aluminum and steel, but you can use steel dollies on aluminum. Steel dollies are much harder than the softer aluminum, and if they're maintained and isolated, then they do not contaminate the aluminum panel. If anything, the aluminum panel gives a little bit of itself to the steel dolly. It doesn't give it the other way. But if I use that steel dolly on a damaged steel panel, the cracking and the breaking in the steel panel would put fibers and other things onto that steel dolly. And then now if I took that tool over and then worked it on aluminum, it would push those fibers into the aluminum deeply, thereby causing that galvanic corrosion. So we like to just maintain a completely isolated set of tools from the beginning, because you don't want to get into practice, dirty practice, and have car panels start coming back to the body shop. It's just going to make no money for everyone involved. So here we have a couple of pictures. You have the grinding tool for taking off the paint in the upper right. You have the infrared, you have the digital set heat gun for measuring the temperatures, measured temperature heat application. And then you have our stud gun here, which connects to the capacitor discharge welder. Now, in this instance, you'll notice there are 3 tips on this stud gun. That's because the grounds are on either side of the central weld point. That's an essential selling fact, because other units out there will require 2 grounding cables to be attached, and those grounding cables need to be attached at the edge of a panel. So if you're working in the middle of a hood or something like that, you'd have to grind away the edges of the hood to attach 2 separate ground cables, meaning that the technician then would have to paint to the edge of the panel and most likely blend into the next adjoining panel. And you can see that more clearly, of course, on the bottom picture at the left. The central picture is a bridge puller pulling on several pins at the same time, and then you have your squeeze puller. Okay, so this is the aluminum repair station offered by DentFix Equipment. Okay, this is a Ford-approved unit for use in their certified and authorized body shops. This unit comes complete with its own set of hammers and dollies, so you maintain an isolated set. It also comes with some nylon shaping tools you can see in the top drawer there for putting edges in the panel. It comes with its own body file, because the body technician is going to be using the same techniques he's used on steel panels, but just needing a completely isolated set of tools. So you have your hammers and your dollies for bumping and hammering back. You have your body file for moving across the top of the panel to detect your high and low spots, or for taking off the head of the stud when you're done with it after you've clipped it down. Again, the body file brings up another point. It's 8 teeth per inch. Aluminum's very soft. It will start clogging up more fine files. So you don't ever want to you don't want to be too aggressive in it because you'll leave some marks in there. That's why they say P80 sandpaper is the most aggressive sandpaper you can use on it. The hammers that we include with this system are all finishing hammers with some picks on them, not shrinking hammers with a cross-hatching on them. Because if you hit an aluminum panel with a cross-hatched hammer, you're going to be putting marks in there that are going to be hard to take out. Okay, again, reinforcing the idea of isolation, this system comes with 3 drawers in it, where each tool sits in its own nesting spot. At the end of the day, if you close the drawer and one of the tools is missing, you know to look around the shop and replace it back. If in the morning when you come and open the drawer and the tool is not there, you know that it has a possibility of being contaminated. And when you do find it, you should do so at the very least some simple wipe down procedures. And if you see that there's a nick or a scratch in your tools, your hammers and your dollies, you should polish that nick or scratch out.
Good.
And you can see the stainless steel brushes are in there for taking off the oxide. 2 different types of pins are included: aluminum silicone alloy and aluminum magnesium alloy. And those are, of course, so that for usability, you'll be using mostly the magnesium style pins, but on the rare occasion that the material is slightly different, and you won't really be able to identify it. It'll be just you've done everything right and the stud pin just won't weld on. At that point, you switch over to the other stud pin. But the thing is not to be afraid with this aspect of aluminum repair, the stud welding aspect of it. It's the same thing that the guys have been doing for a long time, welding a pin and pulling from it. It doesn't take a lot of instruction to get them to weld a stud pin. The hammers and dollies, bumping and that thing, these are things the guys have been doing for a long time. The main key points to get across to them, though, are on the workability of aluminum. It's work hardened, so you have to heat soften it. You have to put the work energy back into it to get it to sit and stay in its new place. You need an isolated set of tools, and this will apply to everything that they use in that side of the shop that's been isolated. They're not going to want to go and walk over and get a screwdriver from the steel area and bring it over. So, for tool salespeople out there, it's an opportunity for a separate tool cart filled now with whatever tools they need to take apart a car. So you isolate your set of tools. You work hard on the material. You have to soften it to pull it. It's a soft material, so you don't want to overstretch it. You can't use hammer on dolly. You have to use hammer off dolly, because if you overstretch it, the aluminum's much harder to shrink back. In this instance, you can see a weld being welded right now. That's the capacitor discharge letting off the energy. Those sparks are mostly gone in less than a split second, so it's not like it sends off a lot of sparks that you need to worry about. The quick connect fingers that you see there, where there's a hand in there with some fingers, that's how we attach to the studs once they're on there. Once the studs are on there, you need another eyelet attachment point. And we use an eyelet system that uses an excenter that quickly slips onto the pin, and then you can pull on it, it's locked, and then when you want to release it, you just push down on a little lever, and it comes right off. All the others, this is our own invention, our own design. Everyone else uses something that is threaded and put on there. And at the end of the day, you have a little dust cover that goes over it and locks it away. So the isolation of tools, the area, I'll go into a little bit the other types of tools that are going to become necessary for these guys. We were talking about stud welders and dent repair right now, but the other tools that they're going to need specialized MIG welders for wire-fed welds. A lot of companies offer these at this point in time, like Carolina and ProSpot, and they go through their own distribution channels, but I'm sure that you guys can find your own ways of supplying that type of equipment. The Ford F-150 is not only revolutionary in its aluminum usage on such a mass-produced vehicle, but also all those panels on the aluminum are held on with what are known as self-piercing rivets. That is a rivet that is driven on to the panel with no hole drilled, and there's a die at the other back end of it on the back side. And so that when that rivet is driven in, it never penetrates all the way through the back panel. It starts spreading through the two panels and holding them together. Well, there's a dent removal and there's a rivet remover and insertion tool that they're going to need to buy too. We're looking at supplying those, but I still have yet to finalize that. So the current 2 units available out there are from Henrob and ProSpot. Those units run around $8,000. You need an aluminum filtration system, fume extractor. The aluminum dust in enough concentrate has an explosive nature. So they ask that the aluminum dust be filtered and vacuumed up with a wet filtration type system in order to suppress any explosive nature. And then, of course, everything from bench pulling and things like that, a new set of jigs. You can't use those items again. So it gives also now for the isolation, it gives an opportunity to provide the customer with some curtain walls. That's the minimal. And then there are some curtain walls with overhead filtration. Also, a good idea is maybe a used spray booth, or one that they are not utilizing right now or have taken apart, and maybe they could reassemble into a clean room. They have to be think outside the box sometimes on this, because a lot of shops just don't have the room to isolate an area, and unfortunately they may not fare too well in this new world of aluminum repair. The other thing is to keep in mind that there may be some aluminum-specific shops born now out of this, where they just do aluminum, and they may contract that aluminum work from other shops around the area and then return the product for final finishing to those other body shops. The thing is, this aluminum repair is coming. There's no hiding your head in the sand. I've talked to a lot of guys at body shops. I was just at the Northeast Automotive Show. Some guys are like, I just won't fix Fords. Well, it's not just Fords anymore, and you can't not fix the most popular vehicle in the United States. Some guys have asked me, well, how long does it take for that galvanic corrosion to affect the car panel? My thought thinking, what's he thinking? If it goes out of his shop for a certain amount of time, he doesn't have to worry about it. And true enough, this guy was doing mostly leased cars. But that's not proper repair technique. And then I've actually dealt with a guy who just didn't believe that there was such a thing as galvanic corrosion and cross-contamination. And so I called him, I didn't call him to his face, a flat worlder. But, you're going to run across a lot of people that are maybe afraid, can't afford it, or whatever. And I think those also present opportunities to walk someone through it and get them started on the repair method. You don't need to spend the $50,000 or so that it takes to aluminum up right away, but you can start an isolated area. A curtain is not that expensive. And you can buy a stud welding system and start pulling out damage. If the damage becomes much greater than that, then there are ways of taking the panel off and just replacing it. But you can't just do that for every panel. So I think that if we work our way through it with our body shops, we can engender ourselves to them and create an opportunity not only for our customers, but for ourselves as well. So in conclusion, I guess I'll take some questions from you. We do have videos on our website of me reviewing our particular stud welding system, and there are articles we've written that review the usage of aluminum and the special needs of it. And if any of you have any specific questions at any point in time, I'm always happy to answer those for you. All right, Mark?
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. I'll throw it out to the To the audience, if you do have any specific questions for Eric, now would be a time to take your phone off mute and ask those.
Okay, I didn't catch that, Mark. If you could repeat it for me.
No. Yeah, I can't hear it either. If you could repeat that question? Well, I can faintly hear somebody talking, but...
Mark,
If
can
anyone
you hear
else
me?
can hear him, maybe repeat it, or if you have your own questions.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Dean Vogus here. Just curiosity question. If DentFix is going to offer temperature-sensitive markers, I mean, you kind of made a mention of a black marker. I know that they make, in the welding world, they make crayon or little test strips that can sense temperature. Is that something you're working on there, Art?
Well, they are available through welding companies, the crayons, and then there are some markers available also. We don't make those. I don't have access to decent pricing on those for distribution. So you can source those and offer those to your customers. They are a workable solution. The crayons themselves, I tend to think, are a little bit messy. And in general, if it is a very particular or a very limited heat range, I believe that the heat gun in and of itself is enough of a assurance that you're reaching the proper temperature without exceeding the temperature that you could utilize it. Again, you have to think about the real world. Okay, there's a lot of guys out there that are very specific and diligent about what they do. And that's great, and they can get into that and start using, the crayons and put them down and know they've got to the temperature. But in the real world out there, a lot of guys are not going to go that far. They need something that's simple, easy to use, and get the repair done as good as we can allow it. If we make things too complicated for them, and not that putting a marker on there is very complicated, but the whole system that we've designed is designed to reinforce in the technician the needs for isolation, the needs to heat the panel. We try and keep it simple for them so that they'll utilize it. If it becomes too complicated, it becomes one of those tools that either sits off to the side and doesn't get used or gets used incorrectly. And we want to straight line it as much as possible for these guys to get it going. Once they get beyond the initial, let's say fear, but also lack of knowledge of the workability of aluminum, once they get a little bit into it, they'll find that it's not something that's so difficult to do. It truly is just, maintaining a very few cleanliness practices, and then going from there. Okay. Okay, someone's got 4-inch tile and fireplace and paint. I don't think that's us.
Yeah. All right, any other questions for Eric? Okay, well, Eric, I want to thank you tremendously. Very informative session tonight. For those who are listening, and if you have colleagues that perhaps weren't able to join us tonight, tonight's program will be recorded and placed on the MOU system under the Medco University tab probably within 24 hours. So you'll be able to have either review it yourself or pass tonight's presentation on to other people that you work with. Again, thank you very much.
I'd like to say one last thing in conclusion.
Yeah.
I mentioned how many Fords are going to be out there, but this is a growing thing. Okay, so no reason for anyone to panic out there right now. Nothing is different than last year. We have foreknowledge as to what's happening. It's a great thing. October is when the F-150 is going to be launched. But as I mentioned, it's going to be launched, you got 14,000 the first week, okay, that's across the United States. And then the first month you're going to have 63,000. So it's not like it's going to, all of a sudden, every shop in the country is going to blow up with these things. But now is the time to prepare. I see guys who have already placed orders for units. They're the ones, the forethinkers, and they want to make sure that their guys are comfortable and that they're ready to seize the opportunity and take this business on in their shops. And then there'll be guys who are coming on and getting with it before the October. But it's never too late for any of these customers, even in the new year after the Ford has been launched, because it's going to be an ever-growing presence in the thing, and they can all get up into the system. This brings me also to the fact that there is a huge demand for aluminum repair systems right now, and it exceeds production capability. And we are looking at a couple of months out for orders placed today for our aluminum repair products, and I know that many other companies are also finding themselves in the same situation. So please bear with us as we increase our manufacturing capabilities, which we are doing, and everything is in the pipeline in order to provide units going out. So this is a short-term backorder situation for us, but we're building into it. We have sold more units in the last 60 days than we have in 4 years. So this is a good situation to be in, and we expect it to only grow larger from here. And so everyone, start getting into your mind this aluminum repair thing, and I think you'll see great growth through it all. Again, thank you, gentlemen, very much, and have a good night.
Hey, this is Jeff in California. I had a question still.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, when you were talking about cross-contamination and cleaning tools, if they do become, contaminated with steel, whatever, you just mentioned polishing. Is it just regular polishing compound, or is there a preferred, chemical wipe, to use? And then the other question is, when you do have that cross-contamination occur under the paint, do you have pictures on your website of what that actually looks like? Does it look different than some other contamination that we would see?
I see. Okay. Well, for the first thing, the maintaining of your hammers and dollies. If you've been using your hammer and your dolly on steel for its entire life, don't try to clean it and bring it over for use in aluminum. You should start off with a highly polished steel and a hammer, okay, dolly and hammer. A highly polished, has a nice glow to it. You've seen dollies that have, you could see the grain in them and things like that. That is not a highly polished dolly. You have to maintain a highly polished dolly in order to prevent it from fracturing into the aluminum panel. Okay, and so the cleanliness of it, if it's got some, listen, if you left it out on a counter and, shops with the dust falling out of the air from grinding, etc., a simple wipe down is fine. If it has a nick or a scratch in it, what we do is, if it has minor scratches, I suppose a polishing compound will take care of a very light subsurface. But we're talking polishing wheel with a clean wheel on it, so that you didn't polish some steel with it earlier. A clean polishing wheel and getting down, a couple of microns down below. As to what the corrosion would look like under the finish, you may be wondering whether or not it's caused by whether I did it or whether it's previous rust or what have you. Depending on the concentration of it, it can appear differently. If I left an exposed aluminum panel in a shop without separation, and someone was grinding nearby on steel, the particulate dust that would fall across the panel, and then let's say I epoxy coated it and painted, and then it would start to come out. Your panel could look like sandpaper. Even though the micro dust would be, let's forget the fact that there'd probably be dust underneath it. It would grow. It would grow to the look of like sandpaper, where it would start bubbling up and sticking up. The look of it would be where the contamination is and what's the concentration of it. But it would be a bubbling up of the paint, very similar to what rust is. But when we think of rust and stuff like that, you see that big, huge bubbling area where it starts making a big mark. That's not the type of corrosion you'll see, because it's more widespread, and thus it won't ever be at, well, it could be, if it depends on how badly you screw up the panel, but it won't be that concentrated in a thing, but it will be noticeable and it will require a refinish. Okay?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
I'm a distributor in Kentucky. My name is Terry.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point are we going to be able to have a manufacturer rep or somebody come into our market to demo these units so we can sell them?
Well, DentFix as a company doesn't utilize representation. I have a couple of reps in very key areas, like in Florida, and actually one in Philadelphia for Medco, but they're not traveling salespeople. Because we sell through distribution, we rely on you guys to be the boots in the street. ProSpot and Carliner, these kind of companies, they give out regional distribution area, couple of state area or what have you, and they're their own company. So ProSpot or Carliner makes their stuff and sells it to their own company representative, who then sells it directly to the body shop. We work a little differently in that it allows us to have the maximum amount of distribution outlets. So for the maximum amount of market penetration. The aluminum repair station itself, I really want to emphasize it's not hard to use. The idea behind the whole thing is that you have everything you need within the station, and that it locks away to isolate itself. But we don't need to explain hammers and dollies and a tool that removes paint. It's and a stud welder, it's basically weld a stud onto the car panel. That's the attachment point that's created. Now it's really up to the technician to work the aluminum panel. It's like if I handed you a guitar and I told you put your hands on the frets and you move your fingers around and you strum up and down. I've given you the instrument, but to train you to be a master guitar player, that's going to take practice, but you have to understand some principles. And the principles I've gone over with you guys, it is relatively simple. And then the other, for the aluminum repair of the panels, there's those ICAR classes out there. Okay, so now that being said, we do trade shows around the country. We will be at the Medco show in Philadelphia. We will be at the NACE trade show in Detroit. And we will be at the SEMA trade show in Las Vegas coming up. And then we do sometimes smaller shows around the country. I was just in Portland doing a show out there. So please take your opportunity to see us there. Now, also on our website, there are a couple of videos. They're not the most exciting things in the world, but one of them is 1:38 seconds or so, and it's of me telling about the importance of aluminum repair and what we have. That's something you can show your customer and get them excited about it, and then you can, with the extra knowledge you have here, maybe you can review it through. Also, there's a 13-minute video of me on our website. I was doing an Innovation Award presentation, so it really wasn't meant for everyone to see, but it is me going through basically every aspect, opening up all the drawers on all the tools, and mentioning why our unit has greater workability. You can use that. We're also currently editing down a video of us using the tool on an aluminum panel and pulling out damage, okay? And that can be like a demo type thing. But at this point in time, we don't have our own people going around training you guys, okay? We sort of rely on you to pick it up yourself or to meet us in a more centralized location, okay?
Let me ask one question because I was a little confused. When you had the picture of the workstation, on the top left of it, there was a welder there. That's the stud welder itself?
Yeah, in the top part of the cart, and I'm trying to go back here. Let me see. You guys have the images still up on your screens?
I've got for more information, yeah.
Okay, let's go back.
Yeah, there you go.
Here we go. Okay, so the yellow unit in the left side of the box there, that is the capacitor discharge welder itself.
Oh, okay,
and then,
okay.
Going to the cable, standing up on the thing with the two prongs, that is the stud gun. Let me go back one more picture. Maybe it shows it a little bit better. So that's a slightly older version with a blue housing in the front. But there's the stud gun there. It's held on with cables. Now those cables, I think there's around 9 feet of cable from the weld unit forward.
Okay, so it's
see,
long
what
enough
what
to where
you
you
have
just,
there is that's your workstation. There's your workbench a little bit, like for putting things that you're working on. Like if I wanted to lay a hammer up there or something like that, or if I'm working with my leverage puller.
Right.
And then all the tools are underneath, just like a typical tool cabinet. And then at the end of the day, these drawers all close up. A lock goes through them so that they lock, and you're not able to pull them open, so some character in the next bay over can't go and grab your tools just because he wants to mess around. And the scissor top lid there, where it says Alu spot on the top, that whole scissor top lid goes over and encloses the welder itself. So
Okay.
it becomes a very isolated unit.
Okay, I think I got it now.
The weld gun itself is actually push activated. So when you weld a stud when you put a stud in the center gun, and then what you do is you place it perpendicularly on the panel, so straight up and down, and then you press it, and then when it hits a certain point, it activates and it welds.
Okay.
Very, very easy to utilize.
Okay. So basically what you said is we either have to come to one of those three venues that you discussed, or we have to just basically buy one and just kind of go out there and sell it ourselves.
Yeah, and I hate to be so cavalier about the whole thing and say, yeah, you got to buy one and do it. I mean, I'd love to be out there helping you, but we're really not that big a company. I mean, we've been around for 35 years, since 1979, but we've always relied on our distributors to get our equipment going out there.
Okay.
And so I appreciate your efforts in it. Getting a unit out there and going around with it would be one of the best things you can do, because the guys do like to see the unit. They like to have their hands on it, and it's going to lead to sales for you. Not everyone is running around with these units. There are some key distributors that see the benefit of this. And as I say, right now, the low hanging fruit and stuff like that, you don't even need to shake the tree to get the orders right now. You just got to let people know you got it and that you can get it coming. The biggest issue with these units right now is supply and demand. The demand far exceeds the supply. Okay, so get an order in with Medco so that they can start getting units out to you. Medco has some units that they're going to be getting for stock across the country, but they're going to be sold very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen?
How about sales literature? Is that readily available?
Yes, it is. We have in our main catalog, which is approximately 28 pages, with all our equipment from our spot weld drills to our measuring tram gauges, etc. We do have a 2-page article spread on aluminum repair, and then we have a 2-page spread on what's included with our Alu spot as well. Then also we have a specific flyer just for the unit that you could hand to the customer. But the catalog works as well too, and heck, who knows, it might bring the sale of a spot weld drill or a tram gauge along too. And so if you give Mark your names, your accounts, and you order the part number DF-catalog, DentFix catalog, I'll get you as many as you want. I've got over 100,000 catalogs sitting here waiting to get into the hands of eager suppliers. So if you need 100 pieces, I'll get you 100 pieces.
That'd be great.
Okay, good. Just let Mark know what you need, or let your Medco representative know what you need, and I can get it through them and ship them directly to you.
Okay, that sounds great. I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.
Okay, again, Eric, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us tonight at Medco University, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for another session of Medco University. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.